You've had the same argument with yourself 400 times, not out loud, not in any way someone else could see. But there's a conversation that loops inside you, usually late at night, usually when you're about to do the thing you know you should do, and it sounds so reasonable that you've never once questioned whether it's actually yours. It sounds like caution. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like you being realistic. But it's not any of those things. It's a recording. And it's been playing since before you had the language to talk back to it. There's a specific belief buried underneath your overthinking, your hesitation, your habit of pulling back right before things get real. It's not a fear of failure. It's not low confidence. It's a single sentence you internalized so early that it doesn't even register as a thought anymore. It runs like firmware. And in the next 20 minutes, you're going to see it clearly, understand exactly how it operates in your nervous system, and learn the one move that begins to strip its authority. Not in theory, tonight. If this is the kind of content that actually makes you think, not just nod along, but genuinely reconsider how you've been operating, subscribing is just a logical move. This channel exists to give you the clearest understanding of your own mind, available anywhere. Every video is built to do one thing: make the next decision you face a little more yours. Here's the story you've probably been telling yourself. You overthink because you're anxious, or because you're a perfectionist, or because you care too much. And whatever solution you've tried, it probably targets the overthinking itself. You've tried to think less, distract yourself more, meditate it away, or just push through it with willpower. None of it sticks. And the reason none of it sticks isn't that you lack discipline. It's that you've been trying to fix a symptom while the cause sits underneath it, completely undisturbed. Overthinking isn't the problem. Overthinking is a protection strategy. It's your mind's way of making sure you never end up in a specific situation again, a situation that happened so long ago you may not even consciously remember it. What you call overthinking is actually your brain running threat simulations, not about what's in front of you right now, but about something that already happened. You're not planning for the future. You're defending against the past. The real question isn't, how do I stop overthinking? It's, what am I protecting when I think this much? And the answer almost always is a belief so old it feels like fact. Think about a thermostat. Not the temperature in the room, the thermostat itself. You can open a window. You can turn on a fan. You can do everything possible to change the temperature. But if the thermostat is set to 72, the system will fight you back to 72 every single time. It doesn't matter how hard you try, the setting wins. Your brain has a thermostat like this, except it doesn't regulate temperature. It regulates what you believe you deserve, what you believe is safe, and what you believe is true about who you are. In psychology, these are called core beliefs, but that term makes them sound like opinions. They're not opinions. They're closer to operating instructions. They form in roughly the first 7 to 10 years of life, during a window when your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for critical evaluation, is essentially offline. A child's brain doesn't evaluate incoming information. It just absorbs it. Whatever the environment says is true, the brain encodes as true, not as a memory, as architecture. So if the environment said, through words or silence or inconsistency, that your needs were too much, your brain didn't store the thought, "Sometimes my parents are overwhelmed." It stored the instruction, "I am too much." If the environment rewarded performance and ignored presence, your brain didn't learn achievement is valued. It learned, I am only worth what I produce. These aren't things you decided. They're things that were installed, and they run beneath every conscious thought you have, shaping what feels possible before you ever get the chance to reason about it. Neuroscience gives us a clear picture of how this works. The amygdala, your brain's threat detection center, matures far earlier than your prefrontal cortex. This means young brains are exquisitely tuned to detect danger, but have almost no capacity to contextualize it. When something threatening or painful happens to a child, the amygdala encodes the emotional signature of that event and tags it as a permanent warning. Decades later, when a situation even vaguely resembles the original event, the amygdala fires the same alarm. Not a similar alarm, the same one. Your body floods with the same cortisol, the same adrenaline, the same urgency to protect yourself. And because the prefrontal cortex receives this alarm after it's already been triggered, your conscious mind doesn't experience it as an old memory resurfacing. It experiences it as a present tense truth. You don't think this reminds me of something painful from childhood. You think something is wrong right now and I need to be careful. This is why you can know, logically, that you're capable. You can have evidence, you can have a track record, and still feel in your body that you're about to be exposed, rejected, or abandoned. The logic lives in your cortex. The belief lives in your amygdala. And when those two systems conflict, the amygdala wins. Every time, not because you're weak, because the amygdala is faster. It fires in milliseconds. Your rational mind takes a full half-second longer. By the time you're thinking about the situation, your body has already decided how to feel about it. This is the engine behind what looks like overthinking. Your conscious mind is trying to solve a problem that your unconscious mind has already classified as unsolvable. You loop because your rational brain keeps searching for a way forward while your emotional brain keeps slamming the door shut. The loop isn't dysfunction. It's a conflict between two systems that are operating on completely different information. One is looking at the present. The other is looking at something that happened 20 years ago, and neither one knows the other exists. Carl Jung put it as plainly as anyone ever has. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. He wrote that decades before we had fMRI machines, before we understood amygdala encoding, before we could watch in real time as a brain responded to a present threat using the circuitry of a past one. But he saw it. He saw that people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because something beneath their awareness keeps pulling them back to an old setting. And they blame themselves for the temperature instead of questioning the thermostat. So here's where this lives in your actual life, not in theory, right now. There are two traps most people fall into once a core belief is running the show, and they look nothing alike on the surface. But underneath, they're powered by the same thing. The first trap is collapse. This is where the belief wins outright. You feel the hesitation, the tightness, the quiet voice that says, you're not ready or this isn't going to work, and you obey it. You pull back. You stay quiet. You choose the smaller option, and it doesn't feel like fear. That's the dangerous part. It feels like wisdom. It feels like being realistic. It feels like you just know yourself well enough to know your limits. But those limits aren't yours. They were drawn by a 7-year-old's nervous system trying to survive an environment that no longer exists. The collapse feels like self-knowledge. It functions as a cage. The second trap is override. This is the opposite surface behavior with the exact same root. You feel the hesitation and you steamroll it. You push through, you perform, you achieve. You collect evidence that the belief is wrong, and for a while it works. But notice what happens. The relief never lasts. The achievement never settles in your body as enough. You can win and still feel like you're about to be caught. That's because you're not disproving the belief. You're outrunning it. And the moment you stop running, the moment you rest, the moment the external validation pauses, the belief is right there, exactly where you left it, whispering the same sentence it's always whispered. Collapse looks like giving up. Override looks like strength, but they're both organized around the same hidden belief. They're both responses to it. Neither one questions it. The narrow path between them isn't about trying harder or trying less. It's about seeing the belief for what it actually is, not a truth, not a character flaw, a recording, an old instruction that was accurate once in a specific context for a version of you that no longer exists. And the moment you see it as a recording, something shifts. You don't have to fight it. You don't have to fix it. You just have to stop treating it as evidence. Here's what you do. Tonight, not next week. The next time you catch yourself in the loop, the overthinking, the hesitation, the tightness that precedes pulling back, you stop. You don't try to solve the problem you're spinning on. You don't try to push through it. You ask one question. What am I afraid will be true about me if this goes wrong? Not what's the worst that could happen. Not what are the risks. What am I afraid will be confirmed about me? Write down whatever comes. It'll be short. It'll be blunt. Something like, I'll prove I'm not enough. Or, people will see that I don't belong here. Or, I'll find out I was never really capable of this. That sentence is the belief. That's the thermostat. And here's why writing it down matters at a neurological level. The act of translating an implicit emotional response into explicit language requires activation of your prefrontal cortex. Neuroimaging studies, particularly the work of Matthew Lieberman at UCLA, show that the simple act of labeling an emotional state in words, what researchers call affect labeling, reduces amygdala reactivity. Not by a little, significantly. Putting the fear into a sentence literally calms the system that's generating the fear. You're not just journaling. You're giving your prefrontal cortex a handle on something it couldn't previously grip. Once it's written, you read it back, and you ask one more question. How old does this sentence sound? Not how old are you? How old does the sentence sound? Because almost every time the answer is young. That sentence doesn't sound like an adult evaluating a real situation. It sounds like a child bracing for something. And when you hear it that way, the authority it's had over you starts to crack, not because you've argued with it, because you've finally heard it clearly enough to recognize where it came from. You don't need to do this perfectly. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to do it once. One loop, one question, one sentence written down. That's the move. And each time you do it, you're not just calming your nervous system. You're teaching your brain that this belief can be observed rather than obeyed. That's the difference. That's the whole difference. Observation breaks the automaticity. It inserts a gap between the alarm and the response. And in that gap, for the first time, you get to choose. You're not going to eliminate the belief overnight. It's been there too long for that. But you don't need to eliminate it. You need to change your relationship to it. Right now, the belief speaks, and you listen as if it's a fact. What you're building, one written sentence at a time, is the ability to hear it speak and recognize it as weather. Old weather. A storm that already passed through a long time ago, still echoing in a nervous system that never got the message that it's over. This was never about thinking too much. It was never about lacking discipline or confidence or courage. You've had all of those. You've had them this entire time. What you haven't had is a clear view of the thing sitting behind your thoughts, pulling the strings before your conscious mind even shows up to the conversation. You didn't read this far because you're broken. You read this far because something in you already knew the explanation you'd been carrying didn't fit. It didn't account for how capable you are everywhere else, and how stuck you feel in this one specific place. It didn't explain why knowing what to do and doing it felt like two completely different abilities. Now it does. The gap was never between knowing and doing. The gap was between your present mind and a past instruction that kept overriding it. You're not behind. You're not late. You're not someone who needs to be fixed. You're someone who just found the thermostat, and the hand on the dial for the first time is yours.